Welcome back to the Climb the Pocket YouTube page. My name is Steve. I'm with my co-host Ryan. And Ryan, I am jacked up. It is week 1 of NFL football, man. It is back during a time we all need this right now. And you have ventured into the start sits by Climb the Pocket in our featured show, Battle in the Trenches. If it's your first time, thanks for coming. We definitely appreciate you watching. You're going to have a good time. Subscribe to the channel if you like our start sits, if you like these videos. And hey, if you are a subscriber already, welcome to the big stuff, man. It is week 1. This is what you guys come for, the starts and sits. We want to help you set your lineups each and every week throughout the season, 1 through 17. Yeah, even those week 17 championships, we will help you out. But hey, before we get into it, Ryan, what's up? I know you're jacked up just like me.
Look, Steve, it's week 1. We're back. We're getting back into, actually talking about fantasy football instead of,
Let's go.
guessing, which is beautiful because let's be honest, the entire offseason is a guess test of where you think these guys are going to land. We're finally going to get to talk about real matchups. We're going to get to talk about how players are performing. I know it's week 1. We haven't seen anyone on the field yet, but this is the best time of the year. The colors of the leaves are starting to turn a little bit in a couple weeks. It's September. I don't wake up sweating in Pennsylvania. There's a nice chill. And my Eagles play on Sunday. We got football on Thursday. I got things to look forward to during the week, Steve, instead of me just sitting at my desk all day doing work. So football's back. I've got something to live for a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
I'm jacked up a little bit. So week 1, we're gonna get into it. Plus, I got my home league trophy behind me now.
I see that.
I've got a beautiful backdrop, and I'm ready to get into it.
Yeah, man, I hope your drafts went well. I hope all of your drafts went well. I'm pretty happy with my team so far. But hey, before we get into the video, if you haven't checked out our website, climbthepocket.com, you're definitely going to want to go over there. We got articles helping you out throughout the week, waiver wire, cuts, drops, all of that. We got our rankings up on there. You're going to want to use those each and every week. We will help you win your weekly matchup. Go check out our Twitter at Climb the Pocket, and me and Ryan's Twitter handles are on the screen. We're a pretty good follow, so go ahead and check that out. But let's get into the bread and butter. Week 1, Battle in the Trenches, starts, sits, and as always, we start out with them quarterbacks. I will go ahead and take the lead. My first start quarterback for Week 1 is Carson Wentz, your boy, your Philly boy, at the Washington football team. Now, in Week 1, we don't really know too much about fantasy defenses, but what I do know is the Washington defense did not get much better. They are a young and up-and-coming team, a lot of young guys on the offensive side, a lot of unproven guys on the defensive side, and I like Carson Wentz to come out there and specifically target Desean Jackson like he did earlier last season with a couple of TDs, over 100 yards easy, and I think that's going to pad Carson Wentz's stats, along with feeding his tight ends like Dallas Goedert and Zack Ertz. I think Carson Wentz comes out to a real hot start. And my second stardom quarterback is Josh Allen versus the New York Jets. The New York Jets do have a pretty good defensive line, but I think this year they start to open it up, or the Buffalo Bills start to open it up in the passing game with their newly acquired number 1 wide receiver in Stefon Diggs. I think him and Josh Allen are going to have a connection, and I think when the defensive line implodes on the decent offensive line for the Buffalo Bills, I think Josh Allen keeps that ground game going and escapes away, possibly gets into the end zone for a touchdown. So I'm just really excited to watch this team play with Stefon Diggs on there and with Josh Allen just getting better, hopefully getting some accuracy going. Playing the Jets, you can't ask for a better Week 1 matchup, so I'm very excited for that one. Who are your start quarterbacks?
Well, so this one is definitely a little interesting, but I'm starting Big Ben on the road. I know that we talk a lot about, Big Ben splits home versus road, but 2018 he was actually better on the road than he was at home for fantasy, which is, something that doesn't really get talked about. We just keep, hammering home the point that he's not as good on the road. He's in New Jersey against the New York Football Giants. Honestly, every year you try to find the defense that you try to exploit for fantasy, for matchups. And I think this year there's a very good chance that the New York Giants secondary could be that. I know they added Bradbury. He'll probably be matched up against Deontay Johnson, so I don't love Johnson as much this week. But there's so many passing options for the Pittsburgh Steelers that I'm very comfortable starting Big Ben. I think Juju's going to have a big bounce back year. James Conner healthy this week. So, I mean, he's going to be in the lineup. Eric Ebron, he's going to be a touchdown scoring machine. I think he's going to be very similar to when he was in Indianapolis with Andrew Luck. I think that's kind of his role. So I'm very interested to see what they do with him. Big Ben is definitely a start for me. I'm also starting Jimmy Garoppolo against the Arizona Cardinals. Last season, Jimmy Garoppolo had 28 fantasy points and 31 fantasy points against Arizona. So he's a very solid play. I think he's more for the daily fantasy people, where he's probably weekly a quarterback 18, but I think this week he definitely has value. I know they're thin at wide receiver. They're not thin at running back. There's a lot of pass-catching backs there. And, of course, the best tight end in the league, George Kittle, is healthy. He was. I really don't think Kittle was very healthy at the end of the year last year. We're going to get 100% George Kittle. So I'm definitely starting Jimmy G as well.
Yeah, I look to exploit that Arizona defense again, still against the tight ends. I think that's going to carry over to this year, at least for a little while. So, hey, why don't you lead us right into your sit quarterbacks?
Yep, so one of the sits is in the same game as Jimmy G, and that's Kyler Murray. There's a lot of pressure on him. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins just got the fattest contract for a non-quarterback ever. I mean, they've got your boy, kind of boy, in the backfield, Kenyon Drake. I think it's a very tough game for him to start a season with. They're in San Francisco, who have a notoriously good defense. They're coached well, and San Francisco kind of chews clock. They play a game that isn't conductive to passing the ball a ton. I do like Kyler season long. I think he should be a top 10 quarterback, but it's going to be tough saying that he's going to be a top 10 quarterback this week. There's a lot of moving parts in that offense, and against a tough defense to start the season, I don't really like Kyler. And similarly, I'm not starting Cam Newton against Miami. I know that's a weird kind of feel for a non-start. I don't like Cam just because I'm not sure what this offense is going to look like with Cam. The passing weapons are gross. If we're being honest, I don't like really any of the wide receivers. I mean, Edelman's going to be fine, but aside from that, he's not really throwing to a whole lot. I like James White. And Damian Harris, my boy, is out for at least 3 weeks. So I'm not sure what this offense is going to look like. Cam's probably somebody that you didn't take as your main quarterback, so I wouldn't risk throwing Cam Newton out there week one. You'll get a feel of what he can do after this week, and then going forward, you'll be able to reevaluate.
It's going to be risky to keep, or not risky, but it's going to be tempting to start Cam Newton against Miami at home, first game of the season. But, hey, like you said, it's probably not your number one quarterback unless you're in a deep league. My sit-em quarterbacks, I'm going to start with Daniel Jones versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is just a defense that you just want to stay away from when you're throwing the ball. They have some really good cover corners, and that defense picked it up really, really good like the second half of the season last year. There's a reason they're the number one defense going off in fantasy drafts right now, them and the 49ers. So Daniel Jones, look him to he's got a pretty tough schedule right away. This probably could be a sit for a couple weeks here, but looking to put him on your bench, just kind of get acclimated this year. If he comes out throwing interceptions and fumbling the ball, I can see that this being that kind of matchup that forces those things to happen. But we like him season long. We think he'll get over those woes after he gets through the first couple games of his schedule. But I'll put him on the bench this week. My next sit quarterback is Kirk Cousins versus Green Bay. So they're at home in Minnesota. No fans there, so they're not going to have the skull crowd there to help them out. And Green Bay usually plays well at Minnesota. I like the Green Bay secondary. They're pretty underrated. They were underrated last year. They're underrated this year. And, of course, that pass rush, the Smith brothers, they're coming in hot on Kirk Cousins, and Kirk Cousins lost Stefon Diggs. I don't like this receiving core. I like Dalvin Cook. Obviously, I think he'll be able to dump the ball off to him, and I think they'll be able to run the ball on Green Bay. But because that's what they're probably going to do early and often is run the ball, I don't like Kirk Cousins in this matchup. I don't think Green Bay gets away in this game and makes Kirk Cousins throw the ball. So overall, I think this is going to be a pretty not very good game for Kirk Cousins, maybe around 12 to 13 fantasy points. So someone you definitely going to want to have on your bench. Probably wouldn't start him unless you're in a deep league, so keep him on the bench. Let's go ahead and move on to the start running backs, and my first start running back is Mark Ingram for the going against the Cleveland Browns for the Baltimore Ravens. I love this matchup for Lamar Jackson and the Ravens with Mark Ingram, the veteran presence, going against Cleveland. A lot of people are high on Cleveland like they were last year, thinking last year was just a fluke. And this year, all that firepower is going to unleash. I think the Baltimore Ravens come out exactly where they were last year. high flying rushing attack by the quarterback, by the running backs. They get J.K. Dobbins involved. They get Mark Ingram involved. I think he gets in the end zone twice, probably 15, 16 carries. But getting the end zone twice is definitely going to make his fantasy day. So I love Mark Ingram against Cleveland. And then my second start running back is a guy you mentioned earlier, James White for the New England Patriots going against Miami at home. I really like Cam Newton to dump the ball off to James White a bunch in this game. They don't really have much in the receiving core. They do have N'Keal Harry. We'll see what they're working on in training camp. Maybe it will show in week 1. But, N'Keal Harry is going to have a tough matchup against Byron Jones. And then you have Julian Edelman, who definitely eat, but we don't know what this offense is going to be, so I think James White's going to be a perfect safety blanket in this first game. Bill Belichick can trust him. They want to start out with a W against Miami, which, they have struggled in the past against Miami, surprisingly. But, hey, they're home, so I think they're going to get it done. Let's go ahead and move on to your start running backs.
Yeah, so national game, DeAndre Hopkins just signed a fat contract. Bill O'Brien's going to make sure he doesn't look like an idiot, right? So I'm starting David Johnson, right? I think O'Brien's going to do the best he can to make sure David Johnson looks great as the only game on Thursday night. So David Johnson is a fat start for me. You probably drafted him as your RB2. I would feel very good about that. If he's a flex play, I would definitely firmly have him there. I do really feel good about David Johnson's volume. The last thing that they can do is throw David Johnson out there and then all of a sudden kind of go away from him in like the third and fourth quarter. So I think David Johnson's going to be an asset the entire game. I'm definitely playing him. My other start, he's trending up seemingly, even though you should have been drafting him all year. Jonathan Taylor at Jacksonville. What is Jacksonville doing? We're not sure. I don't see, Jacksonville as a formidable defense. They're getting rid of everybody. I really do think Jonathan Taylor only will need 18 touches to be very productive as a fantasy player this week. So I'm definitely starting Jonathan Taylor as well.
Yeah, definitely. Jonathan Taylor is definitely an exciting rookie going in like third round of fantasy football draft. So they're probably going to want to use him pretty early. They moved up in the second round to get him, and they're going to get him out there. Like you said, 18 touches. I think he'll definitely get it done against that poor Jacksonville defense that is clearly trying to tank. So let's go move on to the sit running backs. I'll start it off with the Bills running back core that includes Devin Singletary and Zach Moss against the New York Jets. Like I mentioned earlier, the New York Jets, their defense isn't very good, but the one strength they do have is a good defensive line. I think they're going to be pretty good at stuffing the run. I think it's going to be a pretty good show, like I said, for Josh Allen to do a lot of work on the ground and a lot for Stefon Diggs and some of these other wide receivers like John Brown, possibly even some Cole Beasley, some Dawson Knox to get it down in the passing game. So I don't like the Bills running backs here. Zach Moss, definitely intriguing throughout the season. Devin Singletary, not as excited about, but this is not the matchup for them. Don't let the New York Jets take you in and want to start them against them. My second sit running back is Jordan Howard at New England. This is just a bad matchup. I think New England does win this game by a pretty good margin. It is exciting to have Ryan Fitzpatrick back at quarterback and Devontae Parker out there and whatnot, but they do not have a good matchup. Devontae Parker is going to have a tough day against Stephon Gilmore, and I think Jordan Howard, because the Patriots are going to be up, he's more of that goal line back, more of that inside the 20 back, and I don't think they're going to have a lot of opportunity to run the ball against this stout New England defense. So I'm keeping Jordan Howard on my bench. Who are you sitting at running back?
Yeah, so this one's tough because it's against an NFC East rival, and it's a guy that's on my fantasy team that I will not be starting this week, and that's Cam Akers. So far, the Rams are reluctant to just say it's Cam Akers' backfield. They're still, allowing Malcolm Brown to hang around a little bit, which is fine. I think that they'll have, a fine rotation, but eventually it will be Cam Akers' backfield. Last season, there was a bunch of rookie running backs that didn't see a whole lot of touches week 1. I think there was only 2 that had over 10, and that was Miles Sanders and Josh Jacobs. The others didn't touch the ball. I think Cam Akers will firmly take the offense and take the reins of the backfield this week. He's going to have to prove it in the limited time he gets. So I'm not touching Cam Akers this week. It will be reevaluated next week, and we'll go from there. The other group is I'm not starting Tampa Bay running backs at all. If you drafted Jacksonville Leonard Fournette, you may be forced to play him. He's going to have limited touches. So to me, that means short yardage, and that means goal line stuff. So you might get lucky with a touchdown, but I don't love the idea of Leonard Fournette being in your lineup this week. And Ronald Jones, unfortunately, I don't like being in the position where he's in the lineup either, where I think he finishes around 65 yards, but because Leonard Fournette's going to be in a limited role, and that's going to be short yardage and goal line, he's going to have to break one off for a deep touchdown, and I don't really think that's kind of his game. I think they're both kind of limited. I don't see either of them going over 15 fantasy points unless there's a deep touchdown that happens. I don't like either of them this week.
There you have it, your start sit. Running backs, let's go ahead and move on to the wide receiver position. And my first start on wide receiver is Marvin Jones, wide receiver for the Detroit Lions. Detroit Lions wide receivers Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones, I think, are going to have a fantastic game against Chicago. I think if one of their better strengths is their defensive line with Khalil Mack leading the way over there, and I think Matt Stafford is going to eat. Marvin Jones has historically eaten against the Chicago Bears. I think this could be one of those games where he comes out hot at the beginning of the season with a multi-touchdown game, not super high yardage, but I think he gets in the end zone. Definitely, him and Kenny Golladay are going to have a great game. And I think the Bears will keep up a little bit. It'll be kind of a closer game than people think. So I'm excited to start Marvin Jones here in week 1. And my second wide receiver start is Jamison Crowder at Buffalo. I think the Buffalo Bills will be up in this game, and I think Jamison Crowder is going to be an asset, not having to face Tre'Davious White on the outside. He's going to play the slot, and I think he's going to leave off where he did last year, being a very reliable guy to catch a lot of passes and make a lot of moves in space to get up the field. Love Jamison Crowder. I think he's going to be Sam Darnold's safety blanket once again. They do have some new weapons in the offense, but Le'Veon Bell is definitely still there. But I think Jamison Crowder is the veteran to trust on that offense, and I think in week 1 against the Bills, they're definitely going to have to use him when they're playing from behind. Who are your start wide receivers?
So they're actually paired with your start quarterbacks, and
all right,
the first one, Desean Jackson. I love me some D Jackson revenge games. He's got 98 yards per game, and I think it was 8 revenge games playing against his old team, and that's exactly what he's doing this week against the Washington football team. I had to catch myself, Washington football team.
Yep.
Last season, he went over 150 and 2 scores against Washington. The rapport with Carson Wentz is beautiful. I mean, he's on my fantasy team. If you drafted Desean Jackson, you probably drafted him at highest your 4th wide receiver. He's going in, ADP wide receiver 55-ish. So you're kind of leery to start a guy that you drafted so late in week 1, but I really do think this is a Desean Jackson week. I mean, we've seen it in the past. I think of the revenge games he's had, he's only been under 50 yards once. Don't quote me on that, but it's definitely not more than twice. So I really do like Desean Jackson this week. I also like Stefon Diggs with his new boy, Josh Allen. I really do think that there's a lot to be said to get Diggs involved early. I mean, we saw how Stefon Diggs acted when he felt like he wasn't involved in the offense. So if you can get Stefon Diggs, going early in the season and he feels like he's the main guy, he's the pass catcher, John Brown has nothing on him in the offense, I think Stefon Diggs can be a wide receiver 1, and I really do think it starts with week 1. I mean, they're against the Jets, who, aren't great. I don't love the Jets. So I really do think Stefon Diggs has a good week this week.
Man, we need a sweet animation with like a big stamp that hits the screen and says locked, because that's how I feel about the Desean Jackson pick week 1. I think if you have a flex spot, I think you can afford to take whoever's in it unless they're a really high power running back, and put Desean Jackson in there. I think he's going to go off in week 1. Let's move on to the sit-in wide receivers, and I'll start with the New York Giants wide receiver core to go along with my sit quarterback, Daniel Jones. Pretty much for the same reasons. I think Pittsburgh's defense is really, really good. Their cornerbacks are really, really good. It's going to be a tough day for Daniel Jones. And, actually, we don't know a lot about this wide receiver core in New York. We know there's Golden Tate. We know there's Sterling Shepard. We know there's Darius Slayton, the up-and-coming second-year guy. We don't know exactly who's going to be the guy, so picking and choosing a guy on this team right now is pretty risky in week 1 against this Pittsburgh Steelers defense. So I don't really want to pick and choose which one I think is going to be the guy. I have Golden Tate on a few teams. He could be reliable throughout the season, but don't want to start him in week 1 against this tough matchup. My second sit wide receiver is Devontae Parker, a guy that I drafted in my main home league, and it's really tough to throw out there in week 1 against the New England Patriots at home. with Stefon Gilmore covering him, and that's pretty much just it. Obviously, he has a connection with Ryan Fitzpatrick. It's the first breakout year we saw for Devontae Parker, but it's going to be tough in this first week 1 matchup. Miami Dolphins traveling up to New England. It'll be better without the crowd, but it's going to be a tough day with Stefon Gilmore, the best cornerback in the league, in my opinion, right now, going against him. So I'm putting Devontae Parker on my bench. It's going to suck because you probably spent a 5th-round pick on him, so it's going to be tough. But, hey, if you got to do what you got to do to win your fantasy football matchup. Let's go ahead and move on to your sit wide receivers.
Yeah, so I'm sitting Hollywood Brown. He's got Denzel Ward most likely. I just really do like the Cleveland Browns secondary. I mean, they've got Greedy. They just got Ronnie Harrison. I do think that secondary is pretty solid, and the Ravens don't have to rely on throwing the ball even a little bit. I mean, if they had their loins, I'm pretty sure that the Ravens would run the ball literally every single time, and it wouldn't shock me if they do that week. I don't really like Hollywood Brown as an every week play. He's kind of a guy that is boom or bust to me in a similar sense to Desean Jackson, where there's some weeks where he has 2 catches for 12 yards because they weren't getting the right looks. So I'm sitting Hollywood. I do think he's going to be a great player this year. I think he's got all the talent in the world. I'm not slandering Hollywood Brown at all. I just don't think he's the play this week. I'm also sitting T.Y. Hilton. They're playing Jacksonville, and I think they're going to get up early, and they're going to need to see what the running backs can do, and they're going to need to try to figure out how their running back room works. So if they get up early, they might not pass the ball in the second half. T.Y. Hilton is also, a big play guy. They're not going to need big plays. They just need to kind of stay within themselves and make the correct plays. I don't see T.Y. being a huge asset this week, so I'm sitting T.Y. as well.
Yeah, I like that play of sitting T.Y. I don't think they're going to need him like that. Let's go ahead and move on to the tight ends. And, of course, what would a stardom tight end show be without my favorite tight end right in the league right now for whatever reason? And it's Tyler Higbee for the Los Angeles Rams. There's been plenty of news this offseason that Tyler Higbee is here to stay, and he is going to be a featured part of this offense. Jared Goff is going to look for him early and often, according to coaches. So with hearing that news, we think that he's going to possibly be even around 80% of what he was at the end of last season will make him a top 5 tight end. So I love Tyler Higbee against Dallas. It really doesn't matter who they're playing. I'd probably start him this week just because I'm so excited to. So put Tyler Higbee in your lineup if you drafted him as a top 10 tight end. And then my second stardom tight end is another Philly boy, Dallas Goedert. I think that, like I mentioned, Carson Wentz is going to have a great game against Washington. I think he's going to spread the ball around a lot, and I think Dallas Goedert is their 3rd best target on the team right now, Zach Ertz and Desean Jackson. So I definitely like Dallas Goedert. I think he's going to catch a touchdown in this game. I think it's going to be one of those games where Zach Ertz probably has more yards than Dallas Goedert, but I think Goedert can go for 5 for 55 and a touchdown, which is a pretty solid game for a tight end that you probably drafted outside the top 13 or 14. So I like Dallas Goedert. If you got him, get confident, put him in your lineup. Who are your start tight ends?
I'm starting Jared Cook. I do like Jared Cook a lot. I know he seems to be, ageless. He's the Frank Gore of tight ends. But it's going to be in a game against Tampa Bay where, the defenses are a little sus to me, personally. I think it's going to be a shootout. We're at the point, it's week 1, so either Tom Brady or Drew Brees are showing any type of fatigue. So it might be a shootout a little bit. So I do think Jared Cook has the chance to get in the end zone. So that's a play for me. And I'm also starting Hunter Henry. Week 1 with a new quarterback against, the Bengals. They should be able to take care of the Bengals. So if they do everything, in line with what the game plan is, they should beat them. So I do think Tyrod's going to be safe enough to where he finds Hunter Henry a decent amount. He had, great rapport with Charles Clay as a Buffalo Bill. So I think having a similar skill set tight end is going to be big for Tyrod. I don't think they're going to do anything too crazy. I don't think the playbook opens up that much. I think they're going to take their yards when they're given them. And Hunter Henry is probably one of the safer plays in that offense. So I definitely like him a lot.
All right, well, who are you sitting at the position then?
I'm sitting Hayden Hurst. I know he's going to step into the Austin Hooper role. He's going to do all that beautiful, he's a new player on the team. He needs to make a splash week 1. The problem is there's a new player on the defense that he's going against that is more talented than him, and that's Jamal Adams. Jamal Adams helps that Seahawks defense a lot. I like the Seahawks defense in coverage on tight ends. I think that it's a tough matchup for Hayden Hurst. The Falcons are, a team that feels like they should be better, but they were bad last year. People kind of forget that they were not a good team at all last year. And did they get worse at the tight end position? We're not sure yet. I personally think that Austin Hooper was a better player, but I'm sitting Hayden Hurst, and I'm also sitting Chris Herndon at Buffalo. That's a tough matchup in his first game back since 2012 seemingly. Like I like Herndon as a talent. I don't like the matchup. I don't like it's week 1. I think he has a role for fantasy teams, but I'm not sure it starts week 1. You have to keep an eye on him. I'm not touching him this week.
Yeah, my first sit tight end, as you mentioned before, was Austin Hooper at Baltimore. I don't know how I feel about this Cleveland offense. I've definitely mentioned it throughout the offseason. Austin Hooper coming to a new team could possibly be a safety blanket and a reliable target for Baker Mayfield, but I don't know if I'm willing to test it in week 1 at Baltimore. I think it's going to be a really tough game for the Cleveland Browns, and I think they're going to be behind, which could bode well for Austin Hooper, but I think other guys like Jarvis Landry and Kareem Hunt are going to be used more effectively in that offense during that kind of game script. So I'm going to put Austin Hooper on my bench. I'm not really big on him this year. My second sit tight end is Jonnu Smith at Denver. I don't know how I feel about this Tennessee Titans offense. We definitely have high hopes for Jonnu Smith this year, but we don't know exactly what Ryan Tannehill is going to be in his second season in Tennessee, coming off a great season. But look for A.J. Brown to get going. But hey, Jonnu Smith's got a tough matchup against Denver. They cover tight ends well. Justin Simmons is going to be on Jonnu Smith, and he usually guards tight ends pretty well. So it's going to be a tough matchup. Obviously, Jonnu Smith, a freak of an athlete, and I think I like him season long. But I got to see week 1 to see what kind of role he has. If he comes out and has a splash game against this good defense who defends tight ends well, then, hey, I'll definitely consider him for week 2 and beyond. But for right now, he is on my bench. And there you have it. That was our start sits at quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end. If you enjoyed this video, we'd really appreciate it if you subscribe to it, drop a like, drop a comment below of any questions, start sit advice. We will get to every single one, help you set your lineup. We are here for the people. Go check out our website and our Twitter, Climb the Pocket. We definitely appreciate that. And like I said, if you like it, subscribe to the channel and come back for next week. We're going to get you starts and sits every week. We are very famous for nailing some crazy picks. I'll just say it, last year, Will Fuller, 60 points. I called it my starting wide receiver, and I got plenty of more of those coming this year. Ryan, thank you for hanging out today. I hope you had a good time. And until next week, let's go win some fantasy football matchups, people. It's NFL, baby. Let's go.